hours, and Gordo, the commander, floated between the two and just sort of made sure things were going well. But it was very easy working up there. The first couple of days, you're adjusting to zero G, and you don't want to move your head too much or you'll make yourself sick. The couple of our crewmen did get sick. I was fortunate I didn't. But after a couple of days, you just fly around. If you're going to the other deck, you dive through the hatch, just, like you're acclimated to zero G. And the same thing kind of happens when you come back to the Earth. You adapt more quickly. It doesn't take a couple of days. But one of our crewmen actually got sick coming back into 1G. But I was sad at the end of the mission because I enjoyed it so much that I hated it to be over, but I hadn't intended to stay around to fly more. I wanted to get back to doing my science. And that's when I came up to the University of Michigan. Anyway, the greatest thing was the view. And so if you can imagine this, I'd worked in Antarctica. So when we were in a high inclination orbit, we went up. Inclination means how far from the equator you go. And we were up to 54 degrees. And so that gets a little bit into Canada at the top, and it gets down enough to see over Antarctica at the bottom. And so looking over Antarctica at night in the summertime, the auroras are active because the auroras are solar particles that go around the magnetosheath of the Earth and come up the tail away from the sun side. And so the aurora over Antarctica was standing up a 100-kilometer high green curtain with a red fringe, and you could see waves in that curtain. And also, we were flying in early August, and so the meteor shower, the Perseid showers were going on. So while we're looking at Antarctica in the dark, we'd see shooting stars below us.
Wow. And what is zero G, just for people who don't know what that means?
Zero G is when you're floating around. If you were in an elevator that was shut and it fell and you were just floating in there, that would be zero G.
Wow. And then the movie Gravity is a lot of scenes where the people are in zero G the entire time.
Yes.
And it's just Newton's third law. Every action is an equal and opposite reaction. So they're literally just playing with Newton's third law and momentum and trying to survive. It was a really great movie.
Yes, it sounds it. Clooney makes good movies.
Yeah, absolutely. Clooney does make a good movie. Arshawn said, "Is it unsafe to stay too long in space?"
Well, for humans right now, we don't know how to. What happens in zero G? It's almost like bed rest, and so you start losing muscle mass. And people that have stayed up there a year, say in space station or something, have actually lost bone mass. It looks like osteoporosis, and so we don't know how to. We try to exercise on treadmills and things up there by bungee straps to pull you down, and then you run on the treadmill. But it isn't enough exercise to keep your cardiovascular system healthy. It's like if you're up there a year, it would be almost the same as being in bed and not being able to get up for a year. You would find yourself in pretty bad shape after the year. So that's one of the things that we don't understand. Another thing that we don't understand is if you go outside the magnetosheath of the Earth and all, you get into more of a radiation environment, and so your spacecraft won't protect you from all of it unless you had lead around it or something and you couldn't afford the weight. In fact, at night when you're sleeping in orbit, you get flashes in your eyes from Cherenkov. It's called Cherenkov radiation, where cosmic rays are going through your eyeball and it actually causes it to flash. And some of that, is going to damage your brain. Maybe that's what's wrong with me. But anyway, so those things have to be sorted out. And then the third thing is when you're in an enclosed environment or an isolated environment is a better way to say it. And we found this in Antarctica. When you're down there, all your coals and everything, and you're in a single group, eventually it all dies out and nobody gets a cold. And then when a plane comes in, they'll bring in new bugs and now everybody catches a cold again. And the same way on a submarine, the same kind of things happen. But if you're up there very long, you may just lose your ability to, what do they call it? The system that you have that fight germs will weaken. And that's it. In fact, when we were going to isolated tribes in South America and so forth, or in New Guinea, we brought in measles and things that they weren't used to, and they all caught measles. So if you're isolated a long time, your immune system will weaken also. So you'll have to learn how to handle that on a long space flight.
That makes perfect sense. Like the 0G, you don't have that force that goes against you, so your muscles there's no work going against your muscles, so you're not getting any reps. And wow. So I guess if I want to lose this pandemic, I got to go up to space.
That's right.
Yeah, man. My weight. Okay, never mind. I'm gonna stop talking about my weight. But anyways, one student said, what was your initial fears going into space?
Initial fears?
Yes, your initial fears.
I don't know that I really had any.
Okay.
you really something you want to do. It's just like saying, well, what was your fear in driving a car? Eventually, you're gonna have an accident, but you don't think about that as a fearful activity. Well, we didn't think about flying in space as a fearful activity, even though we knew that not everything works.
So what about like what happened to like the Challenger, like the one with the teacher?
Yeah, well, that was the vehicle I flew in before the accident, and and we actually had a blow-by on the O-rings that failed on the Challenger that did blow up. But there are two sets of O-rings, and because we were flying in the summertime, they were warm enough that the second set held. But the first set, there was blow-by through it. There were things that were going on with the shuttle that none of us really understood, and we actually were asking headquarters to stand down until we understood a few things more about we were flying the shuttle. We had 3 missions of what we call open paper. Those are descriptions of things that were going on that weren't understood. And so when we had the Challenger accident, we as astronauts weren't surprised. We were just angry.
Yeah, I do recall. And if you all are interested in learning more about the Challenger, it's a really great documentary on Netflix. It kind of just talks about the accident and the whole logistics of it. And wow, that's amazing. Because that was a space shuttle that they reused, right?
Right.
Shuttles that they reused.
Yeah.
Excellent. Wow. So you definitely a walking legend, man. So Dakota said, like, literally, what made you go up to space? Like, was it like Carl Sagan, Richard Feynman? Like, what made you go up to space?
A scientist likes discovery. We like to discover things. So when I was started in college, there was no such thing really as space flight. I was a sophomore in high school when the Soviet flew their first satellite, Sputnik. And but when I got I was in geophysics, and I was studying the planets, and I wrote a paper in graduate school on what the inside of the electrical conductivity of the moon would be inside that electrical conductivity. If you go up and measure it, it's called magnetotellurics. You go up and measure it, you can tell a lot about how the planets put together, what's going on inside it. So anyway, so here I had studied the moon and written papers on it. And so when they invited scientists to apply, it seemed like a fun idea to go make the measurement myself. Essentially, I'd done the theory on how you make the measurement and what it would tell you, and so
Gotta get up
the
there.
idea now I'd like to go measure it. I didn't get to go to the moon, but anyway, that was my reason for joining.
So talking about science real quickly, just what are just the general applications? So Christina wants to know, like, how is space used, and like how is like the science we learn from space, how on the general aspect, how is that used in everyday life? Like, we know the GPS was from general relativity for Einstein, like what are some other applications?
Well, obviously GPS is what we all use. Your telephone has a GPS system in it, and so it's using the satellites to tell where you are. When the weather satellites, all of that is done. All the models that we use to predict weather are based on observations made from satellites. There are a lot of communication satellites up there. We have a retirement house up at Charlevoix, and so I use satellite TV because there wasn't any cable. Now they're putting it in now, so I like that better than using satellite TV. But that's one thing it's used for, is just worldwide communications. So it's a crowded place up there now with all the stuff that's going up. There are companies putting up hundreds of satellites. I think what they're trying to do is make them cell towers.
Yeah, because they could combine them, right? They combine like certain networks and stuff. And just to kind of show y'all what he's talking about, these are all the satellites. A good depiction. Is this a good depiction or is this exaggerating?
No, it's not exaggerating. There's thousands of up there.
Wow, that's amazing. And everyone has a phone. So if you have a phone, that's your application. And y'all love that phone, so y'all already know. I love these questions. Thank you so much, Tony. We have some more, and then we can get you out of here. I know you're real busy. Any more questions? Kenyon wants to know, would you go back? Like, if you had an opportunity just to go back, would you go back?
Sure. In a minute. Absolutely. It would be a fun thing to do. I think they'd probably decided, they flew the senator, what's his name, from Ohio. I've met a block, but anyway, he got to fly in his old age. Maybe they'll do that for me, but I doubt it.
Fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed. Definitely want you to.
I have an airplane. So I do fly still.
And then my question for you is, how old were you in this picture, man? This is a good picture of you, man. You still kind of look the same, man.
Well, thank you. That was probably not too honest, but anyway, I was 25 when I joined. It turned out I was the youngest astronaut still ever, and they never did it again, so they must have decided it was a bad idea.
Okay, so is there like an age limit you need to be?
Usually, astronauts join in late 20s, early 30s. Most of the time, astronauts have to prove themselves in some other role before, even the military ones. They've been in the military, and they go to military test pilot school and all of that. They're MDs, so they practice medicine, particularly aerospace medicine, for a while. The engineers, usually, everybody incidentally has, so far, except there are a couple of passengers, everybody so far has had an advanced degree of some kind. Even all the military ones have master's degrees in engineering. And the civilian ones all have PhDs or MDs.
Yeah, absolutely. You gotta have at least 20 plus years of schooling, probably, all together, if you want to do grade school and stuff.
Yes, but people ask, what can they do to eventually become an astronaut? And that's not quite the right question, because if there are people who sort of chase it, they think, well, if I'll learn to fly an airplane, they'll hire me. Or if I climb a mountain, they'll hire me. That isn't what it is. What they do is they look for people who are successful in the things that they're doing, and then feel, well, okay, if they're successful there, they'll be successful in the astronaut office. That's kind of the way they think about it. And to be successful in something, whether it's science or engineering or medicine or whatever, you're going to have to work really hard at it. It's going to take a lot of hours each week. And to spend those kind of hours on something, you better enjoy it. So the choice, what I respond is, find something that you really like doing so you can get really good at it. And then when you get really good at it, if there's an opportunity, you can choose to fly. An example of that is Alec Gallimore, who's the Dean of Engineering in Ann Arbor. When he was in college and after, the early years of his career, thought he wanted to be an astronaut. But he went ahead and became an academic scientist. In fact, he develops plasma engines that are used in space. But he's the Dean of Engineering now. And I was talking to him one time, and he mentioned that he wanted to be an astronaut. And at that time in his life, when it was appropriate for him to, that's him, when it was appropriate for him to apply, he decided that he enjoyed being at the university more than going down and being an astronaut. So he never applied. So, I mean, that's the right path. You find something you love doing, and then when the time comes, if you have a chance to be an astronaut, you can make a decision, well, I'll go do that for a while. But but you may decide you like what you're doing so much you don't want to do that. And Alec was like that.
Love that. Thank you so much again. Last question before we let Mr. England go and enjoy the rest of his morning. It is still morning time. Got to get that breakfast in for you, man. We got to make sure we eating the vitamins and getting the protein in. Any questions for the brother, man? Nah, this was great, man. Again, thank you so much. I guess you already answered it actually with the what are the qualifications? What is like the physical standard that you have to be in order? I know there's like a physical standard, right?
There is, but it's not that. If you're healthy, of course, and some of the people, did marathons and Ironman and those kinds of things. I never did those things, but at the time, just to stay in shape for I ran a couple of miles every day and worked. I played racquetball every day, and that was just sort of the part of the keeping in shape. But I never, people, like one of the other scientists in my class was Story Musgrave, and that guy ran Ironman and marathons, and it was, a funny thing. What's his name? As you get older, you keep, recall doesn't work as great as it should. Apollo 11, the commander on first. Anyway, he was really one of the great astronauts, great guy. But he had kind of a wry sense of humor. And one of the things, he was one of the types that would say, I'm not going to go out and run because I don't want to waste heartbeats. You only get so many in life, that kind of thing. And so he was just a little bit pudgy, not fat, but wasn't hard muscled type.
Yeah.
Anyway, the morning of his flight to the moon, you take off, you have breakfast with everybody down at the Cape. And it's a big deal. You sort of celebrate you're going to leave that day. Anyway, he walks into the breakfast room with one of those squeeze balls you use at the gym.
Yeah.
And squeezing, and he says, "Well, I guess I better get in shape."
And then my next question is my last question. the exercises that you all had to do, like they showed in the movie, but are those real exercises? Like the prep, like the spinning around and the little bitty,
Yeah.
is that real?
We did all that during Apollo, but they don't do it now because, well, the shuttle, I don't know what they do now, come to think of it, but when they flew the shuttle, they stopped doing it because the shuttle wasn't strong enough. It only could take 3 Gs, and we got more Gs than that, and we get 7 or 8 Gs in our airplanes. So, we got as much of that as you might want from the airplanes. You didn't do it, but in Apollo, yeah, they ran you up to something like 13 Gs, so you would know what it was like. Because the capsule could actually, if it entered wrong, could have loads like that.
Wow. And again, that is just like, imagine the weight that y'all feel from the gravitational portion of Earth times 3 times 13.
Times 13, that's right.
If y'all ever seen Dragon Ball Z, the hyperbolic time chamber, y'all know what I'm talking about? And he literally, that's what the chamber does. It turns up the gravitational pull, and they pretty much use that to get stronger. But it's an anime.
They move forward in time.
Oh yeah, not the hyperbolic time chamber. I'm talking about the what am I talking about? Oh man.
Come on, you're not old enough to not remember.
It's well. Anyways, I don't want to. I know, right? I got bad memory too. But I do want to give everyone extra credit. I want you all, if you have Netflix, please check out the movie Challenger. Really, really, really great movie. Great documentary on the Challenger. This is that's the space shuttle that Tony was on. Yeah. And it's a really, really interesting story. So please, if you all watch this, let me know so I can give you extra credit. And
also, if you haven't seen the Apollo, the Apollo 13 movie, most of those movies I've